Welcome to Concrete Block, your premier destination for in-depth analysis and discussion of current events from around the world. I'm your host, Walter, and we're glad you're joining us today. In our opening segment, we're shifting our focus to South America, where a significant political shift has occurred in Bolivia. The country has elected a new leader, Rodrigo Paz, in a move that could potentially alter the nation's economic and diplomatic trajectory. To provide some context, Paz's campaign was marked by promises of pragmatic reforms and a more business-friendly approach, which resonated with voters across various sectors. One of the key factors that contributed to Paz's success was his choice of running mate, ex-police Captain Edmund Lara. Lara's story, which includes being fired from the police for denouncing corruption in viral TikTok videos, amplified Paz's anti-corruption message and struck a chord with working-class and indigenous residents of Bolivia's highlands. Paz's plans include eliminating fuel subsidies, devaluing the Bolivian currency, and scaling back public investment. However, his campaign also emphasized the importance of providing cash handouts for the poor and other benefits to cushion the impact of these reforms. This populist tone seems to have convinced voters that he would implement changes at a manageable pace. It's worth noting that Paz has expressed interest in improving relations with the United States, which could signal a significant shift in Bolivia's foreign policy. The country has historically been aligned with left-wing governments in the region and has had strained relations with the U.S. since 2008. In response to Paz's victory, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio stated that this marks a transformative opportunity for both nations, highlighting potential areas of cooperation such as combating illegal immigration and transnational crime. As we move forward, it will be crucial to monitor how Paz's administration navigates these challenges and opportunities. We'll continue to provide updates and analysis on this developing story. We'll be right back with more of today's top news on Concrete Block. Welcome back to Concrete Block. We're diving into the world of law and order in our middle segment today. The Supreme Court has just agreed to take on a case that could have significant implications for gun ownership rights in the United States. At the heart of the matter is a federal crime that prohibits individuals who use drugs from possessing firearms. The Trump administration has urged the justices to weigh in on this issue, which promises to be a contentious and closely watched debate. The case centers around the question of whether this federal crime is constitutional, particularly in light of the Second Amendment's guarantee of the right to bear arms. On one hand, proponents of stricter gun control laws argue that prohibiting drug users from carrying guns is a necessary measure to ensure public safety. They contend that individuals under the influence of drugs may be more likely to engage in impulsive or reckless behavior, posing a risk to themselves and others. On the other hand, advocates for gun rights argue that this federal crime unfairly restricts the rights of law-abiding citizens who happen to use drugs. They claim that the Second Amendment does not distinguish between different types of individuals and that responsible drug users should not be automatically barred from exercising their right to bear arms. As the Supreme Court prepares to hear this case, it's clear that the stakes are high. A decision in favor of the Trump administration could lead to stricter enforcement of gun control laws, while a ruling against the government could expand the rights of gun owners nationwide. Whatever the outcome, one thing is certain: this case will be closely watched by both sides of the debate. The Supreme Court is expected to issue its decision by next summer, and we'll be keeping a close eye on developments in this case. In the meantime, we want to hear from you. Where do you stand on this issue? Should drug users be allowed to carry guns, or are there legitimate public safety concerns that need to be addressed? Share your thoughts with us on social media using the hashtag #SubtleConcreteBlock. Stay tuned for our final story of the day, right here on Concrete Block. Welcome back to Concrete Block. We're wrapping up today's show with a look at some international news that's been making waves. We've got two stories for you, one involving Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese meeting with U.S. President Joe Biden, and the other about Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's recent meeting with President Biden. Firstly, let's talk about the meeting between Prime Minister Albanese and President Biden. The two leaders met to discuss a range of topics, including trade, security, and climate change. However, we don't have much information on this meeting, so let's move on to the more substantial story. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky recently met with President Biden to discuss the ongoing conflict between Ukraine and Russia. According to reports, President Biden expressed his support for Ukraine and its efforts to defend itself against Russian aggression. However, it's also been reported that President Biden may have reneged on a promise to send long-range missiles to Ukraine following a phone call with Russian President Vladimir Putin. President Zelensky has stated that he believes President Biden is looking to end the war and hopes that his meeting with Putin in Hungary will pave the way for a peace deal. However, Zelensky also expressed skepticism about Hungary being a suitable location for the meeting, given its government's stance on Ukraine. It's worth noting that the situation in Ukraine is complex and multifaceted, with various parties involved and different interests at play. As always, we strive to provide you with balanced and unbiased information, and we encourage our listeners to stay informed and critically evaluate the news. In another story, Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese met with US President Joe Biden, but we don't have much information on this meeting. We do know that the meeting between President Zelensky and President Biden was a significant one, and will continue to monitor the situation and provide updates as more information becomes available. That's all for today's Concrete Block. Remember to like, share, and subscribe, and until next time, stay informed.